Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Scott Luton and Kevin L. Jackson with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Kevin, how are we doing today?
Good morning, or afternoon, I guess. But I had a shocking event last night.
Okay.
I was sitting looking at TV and enjoying myself, and all of a sudden I got a chill, and I went upstairs, and I put on a sweat uh, shirt,
Okay.
and I said, "No, summer's gone."
You know what? I am thankful. I am thankful. So as I hear that anecdote, I am ready for football weather and chilly weather and, a good morning 30-degree. We don't get those often in Georgia. You get them often, more often than we do, Kevin. But I love that. And welcome back, Kevin. Always a pleasure to have you on the second Monday of every month. And so today, folks.
Well, before you go,
Okay.
the Washington Commanders 20-16 over the Arizona Cardinals.
The
Just saying.
Commanders, the Commanders. I'm still getting used to that. 1-0, 1-0. It's kind of like
1-0, we're undefeated.
Kevin. It's kind of like the Falcons. Falcons won over the weekend, and the Falcons may go 1-16, but at least we won the first one, right? Well, hey,
you gotta grab the opportunity while it's there, man.
You gotta celebrate every single win, big or small. But folks, hey, today it is a special edition of the Supply Chain Buzz. It's the Digital Transformers edition of the Buzz. So as always, on the second Monday of each month, we're discussing a variety of news and developments across global business with an extra helping of all things technology today, as I'm always joined by the one and only Kevin L. Jackson. And Kevin, we've got a special guest today, don't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I want to say I appreciate you bringing me on the show the second Monday. I really enjoy coming with you, and yes, and a old friend of mine is going to be on the show today.
Well, you know what? Any friend of Kevin's should be a friend of anyone's. But hey, we've got a repeat guest coming back, a mover and shaker, Theo Lau with Unconventional Ventures. She's going to be joining us about 12:25 p.m. Eastern time. So stick around for that. We're going to be talking about generative AI. We're going to be talking about the future of work. And we're going to be finding out why she believes, Kevin, that we've got to 86 this word fintech. We got to 86 this word fintech. But hey, we want, as always, Kevin and I both want to hear from you. So we see some folks, some dear friends already in the comments. We're going to be recognizing them throughout the hour. And hey, if you're listening to this via podcast replay, which we usually publish on Fridays, you ought to consider joining us live on LinkedIn, YouTube, or some other social media channel of your choosing when we go live on Mondays, every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time. Okay, Kevin, let's say hello to a few folks, and then we'll hit a few announcements. And then, Kevin, we're going to start on a much more somber note. Of course, today we remember September 11th, hard to believe, 22 years ago. And yes, I'm going to pick your brain about where you were on this morning in just a minute. But let's say hello to a few folks on a lighter note. Annie, great to see you here via LinkedIn. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hazem via Facebook. Good day to you as well. Josh is also giving us a weather report, cloudy and 60 degrees up in Seattle, Kevin.
Oh, wow. Say hi to my son. He's over in Federal Way.
Okay. All right. Federal Way. Let's see. Mom, Leah Luton, the pride of Aiken, South Carolina, is with us once again. Hello, Mom. Love you. Korai Koze, the one and only. Look at that headshot. That is Hollywood, Kevin.
Sharp.
And it's warm and sunny in Germany, where Korai is for a few more weeks, I believe. Robert Valdez via LinkedIn from sunny Caribbean, Dominican Republic.
Oh,
Greg, tuned back in from Wisconsin. Greg, great to see you as always. Annie was in Toronto. Jurgen via LinkedIn. Great to see you, Jurgen. Hey, T Squared is back with us from the Baltimore area, Kevin.
Oh, yeah, right up the road. Hey, bring in some more chairs. There's people still coming in.
That's right. People are still coming in. All right. So let's do this, Kevin. Welcome, everybody. No, we didn't hit anybody. Welcome. We've got a big show here today between some of the news we're going to be tackling, as well as our wonderful guest, Theo, who's going to be joining us here in about 20 minutes. Okay. So, Kevin, as always, we like to share resources with folks. It's tough out there trying to get ahead, being individually successful as well as leading, success and the day in and day out for your organization. So, we're going to start with our popular "With That Said" newsletter, which dropped over the weekend. Now, Kevin, I got to ask you, did you have one of these
Lunchbox. I don't know. I remember a lot of brown paper bags.
I had those too. But I'll tell you this, and y'all check out "With That Said." There's a lot of fun factoids, but also tons of perspectives from around global business and opportunities you want to check out. But I will tell you, this Night Rider lunchbox, when I saw this on Google somewhere, I'd forgotten I had this same lunchbox in
Oh,
1983, Kevin.
wow. Okay.
And Mom can verify that. Mom, I think, who's in the comments, please don't call me off my memory.
She did. No, you didn't have that. You had Barney.
That's right. That was lit. I wish I was that young, Kevin. Also, really quick, again, resources. We've got an outstanding one of our newest webinars that we just published October 5th, right around the corner. We're going to be focused in on 5 steps to getting proactive with digitization and supply chain data with our friends at Treehouse Foods and Trace Gains. Y'all check that out, and we'd love to have y'all join us for that session. Okay. So, Kevin,
Yes.
in the green room, before we went live here, I was sharing, we were as a team, having a good time and exchanging pleasantries and whatnot and what we did over the weekend. I also was talking about how I find today, September 11th, to be one of the most challenging days to create content, to do anything but, really reflect back on where we were 22 years ago and where we've been since, and all those that lost loved ones on that horrible day and all the conflict since.
Yeah.
But Kevin, take us back. Where were you that morning?
You're right. It really touched everyone, but it's a personal story for everyone and me as well. I mean, on the morning of 9/11, I had just gotten off a flight. I was in San Diego, we just landed, took off from LaGuardia Airport in New York. And I, got off. I went and got my rental car. I went to the hotel, checked in, went up to my room, and I sort of, you sort of sit at the end of the bed and turn on and see what's going on in the news. And I saw the first plane hit the tower. And it was stunning, right? You thought, well, wow, horrible accident. How did that ever happen? So you're sitting there, and then the second plane, and you're just stunned. I sat there for 45 minutes, and then it hit me. I had to get back home. And I spent the next 36 hours just trying to get back home.
Wow.
I actually had a rental car. So I jumped in the car and I drove. I first was on the phone trying to get a flight,
Right.
No flights or anything. But surprisingly enough, I got a flight out of Dallas, Texas. And I had 21 hours to get to Dallas to catch that flight. And I got in the car, drove all night, got to Dallas, went up to the counter there, and they said, "Oh, sorry, sir, they just canceled your flight." And I just despondent, turned around, walked away. I was walking away, and they said, "Yeah, sir, Mr. Jackson, will you mind going through St. Louis?" I said, "Sure." And I got on a flight from Dallas Fort Worth to St. Louis into Washington, Dallas. One of the last flights that day.
Before they locked everything down, right?
Before they locked everything down.
Wow. And a lot of folks may or may not know Kevin is a fellow veteran. He served in the Navy, and he was also a naval aviator in the Navy. When I think about that morning, Kevin, I was in Wichita, Kansas at McConnell Air Force Base, and we had we were an hour behind Eastern time, and I'd signed up for these CNN.com email alerts. And much like you were describing when that first plane hit, there was a CNN email, and the headline was "Small plane hits the World Trade Center." And I immediately thought it was a Cessna or small, single engine or something, and didn't really think too much about it. And then, of course, as you point out, and as the world knows, when the second plane hit, you knew this was no accident, and then things went just got more painful from that moment. And last thought, because we want to change thoughts, and we got a lot of news and a great conversation to get to here today. But today we do all remember, and we will never forget that day. We owe it to all those folks that experienced tremendous loss on the day of September 11th, 2001, and in all the conflict ever since that day. Tons and tons of families that are mourning ever since. So, but you know what, Kevin? One last thought. You look around the room, and maybe you can relate this, being a fellow veteran.
Yeah.
As wonderful as a family we've got here today. For 2 years, I spent a lot of time with that Air Force family of mine. And man, if few things in my entire life brought our mission and clear focus and strengthened those bonds, and we had each other's back, and Bruce Gillen, Troy Boozer, Highland Wong, Ryan Benner. I can remember so many, Claude Daway, so many folks that really took care of each other as you were talking about the lockdown across the country.
Right.
Well, base operations changed. They shut down dorms because there was tons of rumors what may be hit next and where the softer targets were.
Yeah.
And so our lives as airmen, lowly enlisted airmen, changed dramatically. And I'm very thankful of that family that got us through those challenging times. Your last word, Kevin, before we move along.
Well, I think that's the word, family. We have family far and wide and close and near and dear. Never underappreciate your family.
That's right. That's right. And never again, hopefully, never again. And of course, never, ever, ever forget. So, all right. So moving right along on a much, much lighter note. Again, we come at you every Monday, the Supply Chain Buzz, 12 in Eastern time, where we cover some of the bigger stories and developments across the world of supply chain. But today, it's the Digital Transformers edition, and we talk all things technology and then some. And that's where we want to go next, Kevin.
Yes, sounds good.
Get into our first development here. I'll tell you. So in our first story, it's really some good news. What is artificial intelligence already doing well, perhaps, in supply chain management from our friends over at CIO? And here we're mainly referring, Kevin, to forecasting and inspecting, right? But tell us more.
So, artificial intelligence is not something for future supply chain executives to leverage. It is out there working hard today. The current generation of AI is already very good at two things you need to do when it comes to supply chain management. The first is forecasting, where AI is used to make predictions about downstream demand or upstream shortages. An example is Amcor, a $15 billion packaging company. In fact, it's the largest packaging company in the world.
Wow.
And they use AI to predict price changes so it can buy more at lower prices before a hike, or less if it looks like a drop is on the horizon. If it gets hot, people start drinking a lot of Gatorade. You want to get it out there. So most of their market is in food and healthcare packaging, where knowing the consumer's mood that day can mean millions of dollars in profit or loss. The second is inspection, where AI is used to spot problems in manufacturing. These algorithms can also detect one or more events they recognize as precursory to failures, and then warn assembly line operators before production quality falls short. It can also be used to certify materials and components and track them through the entire supply chain. In fact, AI is being used at Intel to improve their microprocessor chip yields. Since several chips are printed on a single wafer using lithography, there is a difference in the power performance profile between those near the center of the wafer and those on the outer edges. So the company uses a predetermined quality threshold to determine whether a chip should be kept or thrown out. But there's more to come. The biggest impact is going to be on supply chain optimization. So, because when supply chains are tailored to specific customer needs, the current generation of AI can optimize these chains and even tailor them to deliver the right product to the right consumer at the right price and the right time. But doing this requires a level of data sharing that very few companies are ready for today. What's really missing are techniques that allow organizations to share some part of their data in full confidence that they haven't given away too much. So the technology is here. Blockchain or digital ledger technology can do that, but we're still about 5 or 10 years away from seeing mass adoption of blockchain in the supply chain industry.
Okay, Kevin, man, you have really jumped out of the gate. A lot of stuff there. I want to go back though, as someone that has led about 15 years ago, led a very manual tracing operation
Yeah, tracing and
manually with
tracking. Yeah.
paperwork and stuff, and trying to separate, what should be confined and from from all the other parts. Oh, that was painful. I wish I had AI about 15 years ago. But I want to add, of course, to your point, AI technology, it's nothing new, right?
Right.
We're hearing a lot more about it, and CEOs are talking more about it. But generative AI, according to many, presents a new massive opportunity that businesses are tapping into. We'll touch more on this also when Theo joins us. But I saw a CNNBC interview not too long ago, Kevin, that quoted Navneet Kapoor, Chief Technology and Information Officer at Maersk, who said, quote, "Generative AI, in my mind, is a once in a lifetime kind of disruption that's going to happen. So there are going to be losses of jobs in the more traditional setting, but I also believe," Navneet continued to say, "it's going to create new jobs that every prior technology disruption has," end quote. I wholeheartedly believe that. Would you agree with that as well, Kevin?
Absolutely, absolutely. Generative AI is opening the minds of the humans, giving them more vision, more letting their imaginations fly, showing as they say, the art of the possible. And this is critical.
Well, and one other thing, before you start to roll your eyes, some of y'all out there, at hearing generative AI, I'll just tell you, Greg White, who's on assignment today, maybe. Hope you're doing well, Greg. He and I spoke with one chief supply chain officer at a retail giant last week that was leveraging Gen AI to find massive freight and sourcing opportunities amongst all of its products. And we're talking about in a matter of days.
Yeah.
This project, according to them, that would have taken a big consulting firm, an army of consultants, 6 months and a lot of big invoices to do. So folks are jumping on this opportunity with big outcomes already. Kevin, your last thought before we move right along to the our second article.
Don't be afraid of AI. AI is a tool that you can use to do your work better and to improve our society. It's not the Terminator. So
it's not the Terminator. All right, T-shirtism. It is not the Terminator. All right, a lot of good stuff there, and that's a lot of the good news. Now, every opportunity comes with challenges, right? It can't be too easy. So, in our second story here, we're about to get Kevin to chime in on from our friends over at Supply Chain Digital. We examine how a poor tech strategy can undermine supply chain transformation, especially when organizational objectives aren't aligned. Kevin, tell us more.
Yeah, the reason we have this show every month is because everyone seems to want to do digital transformation. But, but a mismatch between the technology initiatives and the business goals often is the main reason why these initiatives fail. According to Deloitte, 70% of digital transformations result in failure. And even when organizations succeed, it can take them years before they are ready to compete in the digital market. This is because they don't really understand the power of data. The first step in any transformation is identifying the specific business challenges and the pain points they want to address. The second step is involving stakeholders from all the different organizational departments in the digital transformation process. And they have to identify what data is required to gain the needed insight into the business process or the business challenge. Only then can a discussion about specific technologies begin. 70% of companies don't have any data strategy in place, which this makes it really difficult, if not impossible, to access real-time data and ensure accuracy. This is why supply chain companies need to set standards and principles regarding how they will collect, manage, and analyze data first if they want the digital transformation initiatives to be successful.
Well said, Kev. We could do 6 hours, maybe 60 hours of content around this item, because I want to go back to something that, let's see here. Mohammed, great to have you here today, Mohammed. He says, digital transformation is an old topic in supply chain. Now we need to look on AI integration with supply chain. I would argue, I wouldn't disagree. It's certainly an old topic, but Kevin,
yes,
so many organizations, per what you're just sharing, get digital transformation wrong because they start with the technology instead of what we're trying to do as a business. Your thoughts,
yes,
Kevin?
Absolutely. It's all about understanding your business process and applying digitalization to that process. And that means understanding the data, what data you have, how you use the data, why you use the data, and how the data relates to your own organizational goals. That's what AI can do. Its power is to go through all that data and glean from that data insights to improve your business process.
Yes, well said, Kevin. And Greg, if I've heard him say it once, I've heard him say it a million times. For many leaders, digital transformation is it's like finding that hammer and then running around trying to find a nail. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's so apropos. Now, Jurgen says, you say it, Kevin. It's the infrastructure. Everybody's talking about digitization, but have they thought about the fitting infrastructure? Mostly, no. Jurgen, well said. Great to have you here today. Okay. So, Kevin, a lot of good stuff. There's so much, going back to what Muhammad said, I'm with you. We've heard so much about so many of these topics, but the reason why they keep coming back is because so many business leaders and organizations are still struggling with them years and years later. So stay tuned. A lot more to come on that.
Everybody thinks there's a magic button, right? Press the magic button and it works. There is no magic button.
We were spoiled. Whomever, I can't remember the company that had the easy button commercials. Was that?
Oh yeah, Staples.
Staples. Yes, thank you, Staples, for reinforcing that easy button thinking there. Okay. Again, resources, folks. We're about to welcome on our incredible featured guests here in just a minute. So stay tuned. But really quick, want to share a couple of resources with folks. Kevin, that one of our big missions here is to make life easier for all the practitioners and supply chain pros, business pros out there. So folks, we got 2 events coming up, live webinars, September 21st. We're welcoming in Luke, Pat, and Bart. We're talking about unlocking the power of diversification and last mile delivery. Talk about things we've heard about for since the beginning of time, but still trying to
Yes.
get right with last mile delivery, right, Kevin?
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. We
so
got it. It's that easy button for last mile delivery.
we're all looking for that. September 21st, 12 noon Eastern time. Y'all join us for that event. And then on the 26th, welcome in our friends from Supply Pike. Folks, if you do business with Walmart, you know how challenging it can be. But I would argue you find success working with Walmart, you can apply those lessons learned and techniques and you name it to across your portfolio of customers. So join
Yeah.
us on the 26th for 3 proven strategies to level up your business with Walmart. And Kevin, if you can do business successfully with titans of industry like Walmart, I bet you're going to be pretty good at working with everyone else. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. If you can make those Walmart aliens happy, you can do anything.
I got a new word. Walmartians.
Walmartians.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for being with us so far through the first half of the Supply Chain Buzz here. We have a real special guest, as Kevin called Theo, a longtime friend. Well, it makes two of us. We really enjoyed Theo being a part of a variety of shows, including a really fun live stream on This Week in Business History. So I want to welcome in our special guest today, Theo Lau, founder of Unconventional Ventures, as well as a public speaker, popular author, advisor, and host of One Vision podcast. Theo, good morning, good afternoon. How you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having me, guys. Hi,
The
Kevin.
power of the swoosh. The power of the swoosh.
I know. I feel so special.
Well, Theo, it's so neat to have you back. We really enjoyed, of course, I've got Beyond Good, your first book, and then we've got your second book we're going to talk about here in a minute. You and Kevin, I tell you, prolific authors, and that's just part of all the stuff they are up to. But Theo, on a poignant note, just as we were talking a minute ago before we got into the news, September 11th, 2001, hard to believe is 22 years ago. But Theo, I'd like to ask you where you were that morning 22 years ago.
I remember. I was traveling just like you too. I
Hmm.
was actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I still remember I was before my current life, I've spent 15 years in telco. So that's the backdrop. So I was with Williams Communications at Tulsa. And I remember I was in a hotel lobby with my team. And we came down from breakfast. And I saw on CNN the news, and it showed a plane crashing, and we didn't think much of it because the volume was mute. We just looked and was like, oh, maybe it's a new movie or something. We walked into the office across the street. We just sat down, and the next thing you know, everyone's phone was ringing off the hook. And that was when we learned the news. So we all wrapped up and left right away. I was there with another engineer, and we took the rental car that we had and drove straight from Tulsa back to DC. It was the longest 24-hour drive of our lives. I still remember going into the Walmart right there and getting some supplies, water and whatnot. And that was the first time in my life that I saw guns. They were selling guns in the store. Of course, I didn't know. And people were picking up guns and ammunition. I'm like, it had this sinking feeling. And then my parents were in DC at that time. And of course, that none of the cell phones went through. It was a gruesome drive. And the two things I remember was the sky was really blue. You didn't see trails of anything because all the planes were grounded. The second thing I thought was, it was scary. It was scary. The unknown was very scary. But that was also the time I remember we were rolling out a new platform for Williams, and people were genuinely nice and concerned, and we put down a lot of our differences at that time because the project was in a very rocky path, and we saw the human side from this unfortunate incident. So that was that.
Well, Theo, thank you for sharing, and I really appreciate your reflections there. And Kevin, going back to where you
Yeah.
were, and then hearing from Theo where she was, you know, one of the things I remembered is just I could not get enough information about what was going on. And I think that's when the crawler, the scroller,
Yeah.
all the headline news started rolling those out, because as one story was going, you get updates from the 1,000 other stories. It was the hunger for real information you could depend on and trust was such. That was in the forefront of my mind. Kevin, your quick response to what Theo just shared about where she was.
You know, the importance of that information, and unfortunately, maybe we are losing our ability to trust the information we see on TV, and that's scary because you're right. At that time, we were dependent upon, what they told us on the news, where to go, what was happening, and we had a belief that they were telling us the truth. Unfortunately, things have changed, and we can't believe everything that comes across the news.
Mm.
But that information is still critical and important to our lives.
Yes, agreed. Trust is going to be a big theme, I think, throughout the second half of today's show. So, Theo, thanks again for being here and taking a break from your world tour, which we're going to touch on in just a second. Thank you for sharing your personal journey from 22 years ago. And as Jurgen says, on a much, much lighter note, Jurgen, like the rest of us, loves your background, Theodore. And I'm with from the Lego sets to the pictures. I bet you get comments all the time, Theo.
It's a that's how you break the ice, right? Do you remember, like, what, 3.5 years ago now? Oh my God, time's flying. That we were all at home, right? And
Yeah.
that was the moment that we were allowed to show our authentic self, our real self. The fact that, oh, you have a pet at home. The fact that, oh, wait, you have children at home. Of course we do. So it's a part of, there's another side of all of us that we didn't see when we're always on the road. And this is the other part. I love F1. I love Legos. I love Star Wars.
So you're a real person.
I am a real person. I don't know. Maybe I'm a digital twin. You didn't know that, Kevin.
Digital twin, yes.
It's been a few years since we met, so
Yes.
we need to fix that. You're down the street. I don't know what.
Right up the street from there.
Well,
we need to, yes.
Let's all meet at Joe's Seafood, Kevin. You and me and Theo, and have the meal of our lives, like Kevin and I had a month or two ago. All right. So moving right along, we're going to get into a lot with Theo and Kevin in the second half of the show. I want to start, Theo, with what we were talking about with our first, really through the first half. Generative AI, Gen AI. Man, if folks have heard that probably 1,000 times a day, some folks get it, are putting it into place. Other folks are on the other side of the spectrum, perhaps, are scared to death and don't know where to start. Your thoughts, Theo, when it comes to generative AI?
Two thoughts. One is, I like the optimism, Kevin, that you shared. I undoubtedly think that it does a lot of things to productivity, but I have a different point of view. And what you two just said about trust, it is so true. Right before the summer, I did a keynote in London. The whole topic was about generative AI and trust in banking. And when you cannot trust what you see, and you can no longer trust what you hear, what does that do to our society? Our society is based on trust. Financial services industry is based on trust. When you have technology that can clone your voice in 3 seconds, what does that do to not just security, but what else? Just like what you were saying, right? You see something on TV. Is that true? Or is that not true? You see videos that, could showcase politicians saying something, but is that right or is it not right? When your brain constantly goes through this exercise of doubting, I do worry, what future do we have? And of course, not to mention in the United States, I think we're a tad behind from a regulation perspective. Is like free for all. You have big technology company that's rolling out all kinds of things, and with the caveat, by the way, it's not ready. Well, guess what? You let the genie out of the bottle. It's too late now, isn't it? By saying that disclaimer, you cannot absorb yourself from all the problems and challenges that we have. Of course, we need to innovate. Of course, we need to use new technology. Of course, we need to find ways to help us do our work better for many, many reasons. But that does not absorb you from responsibility and accountability.
Right. One of the things that kind of hit me is the first time I saw a deep fake of myself.
Really?
It became scary, right? It
Oh my
became
God.
real.
That's scary, right, Kevin? I mean, like, because we just don't know what's out there, right? And
Yeah.
right before the show, and I was chatting with Scott. For those of us who write, we write so much, and everything is out on the internet. You have a crawler that's crawling everything. I don't know what's happening to the things I've generated, or to the artist that's created so many things, right? Where
Yes.
do they stand? It's just it's a little bit different from the way I used to think about AI growing up, because I grew up in Asia. And oftentimes when we think about robots, we think about future, we think of that as being a very collaborative and helpful. We always have helpful robots. Kids loved robots. I loved robots. And then I moved to the States, 30 something years ago. I'm dating myself. And I see everything as about Terminator, like what you were saying. It's all about, the robot's going to take over the world, it's going to take over humankind. And whoa, wait, what happened to the nice,
The
friendly
nice
robot,
robots.
right? What happened to R2? Give me R2 back.
All right. I got to weigh in here. Kevin and you and Theo are having too much fun. I want to, Theo, if you could, it's interesting because we are kind of talking about, as there is with any opportunity, there's all sorts of different angles and things you got to consider and dynamics. And what's good for one person or one organization is not necessarily, a good fit or good for
Right.
someone else. And Theo, you were talking about in the green room. I tell you, we're going to start recording the green room conversations. But you were talking about those consequential moments when AI gets something wrong,
Yeah.
and how that really ups the ante and the impact that can have when, if we can't contain and control that. Your quick thoughts of what you were sharing, Theo.
It's that's one thing I think we tend to look at technology with a very broad stroke. And we forget the fact that, it can be one thing when, I use ChatGPT and it brings up
Mhm.
some silly hallucination of me. I remember half a year ago when I did that, it said, I have a master of economics from Colombia. I'm like, oh, yay, this is cool. I had a master, but not economics, and definitely not Colombia. That would have been nice. I want to add that to my resume. So that's like silly mistake. But then is another thing when you create all kinds of challenges from a personal perspective. What we were sharing was about a mental health issue and challenge with a eating disorder website. And what they did was they replaced the human, um, I don't even know what they call them. The human,
Representatives.
yeah, something like that. I think there was a technical name for it. The human behind the screen,
Right.
instead of having that person chatting with someone that was submitting query, they actually have a bot. And that bot recommended that visitor to go on a diet. Now, imagine if
Wow.
there's a person in distress that needs help that's going to your site looking for help with eating disorder challenges, and you tell them to get on a diet.
Wow.
The repercussions are severe. Or think about it from money perspective, financial services,
Mm.
wealth management. You give the wrong advice, that can be much heavier impact to someone's financial future than just a silly joke or
Yes.
recommending a wrong book or something.
So, what you're illustrating, at least part of it to me, and Kevin, I'll give you the final word here in a second
Right.
before we move on, is empathy. Empathy. Humans, thankfully, have cornered the market when it comes to empathy. And so when I hear about that, Theo, that response on that site, eating disorder site, they're trying to get the bot or the automation was trying to give an answer or a solution, but they're missing that context, missing that empathy, and that is so important, no matter in almost any conversation or situation. Kevin, your final word here.
So last week, Intuit launched their new AI-powered virtual assistant. And this company invested at least $20 billion
Wow.
into
Goodness.
creating this capability. And the audience may not know, Intuit bought MailChimp, right? And Intuit is like one of the largest, if not the largest, business financial services company in the world. They made uh, really, when it comes to doing your taxes, TurboTax, that's like number one. So that's personal tax recommendation. And they're blending this all together to become the leader in both business and personal finances. Isn't that scary?
Uh, you know what? It is scary. And Kevin and Theo, if I can, for those Star Wars fans out there, if you remember how bad the stormtroopers' accuracy is, you don't want to get financial advice from folks with accuracy that bad, right? Of course, we're having a little bit of fun, but really, kidding aside, these poses some really big consequential um, failures and outcomes. So we got to really
Yeah.
be careful about picking and choosing our spots here.
And you
All
may
right.
not know, are you talking to, is it human or is it AI?
Well, Kevin, I want to see that video of you that you mentioned earlier. I got to see that. All right. So Theo, let's get back. The second thing we want to ask you about, there's so much that organizations come to you and seek your expertise on, but technology's impact on work and the future of work. Paint us that vision, Theo.
What I like to see versus what companies are doing. That's
Yeah.
very different.
What should folks know? What should folks here know? Maybe.
I'm hearing a lot of executives saying that they want to use AI to reduce the headcount, but of course they don't say that. They say they use AI to improve efficiency, but because of that, they will stop hiring or they will be trimming workforce. Now, I have no problem, again, let me restate, using technology to improve efficiency, but that's not where the story stops because we know the society is constantly changing. We know how we run businesses is constantly changing. We know that you need to move people around, but what do you do with them after? Right? And that's the part of the story we don't get to hear. Are you reskilling? Are you upskilling them? Are you providing them with different opportunities so they can thrive somewhere else? Because people are not just resources you use and toss, which sadly it feels like that's what it is right now. So that's my one feedback. The other one is there's a lot of pull and tuck in the US about whether or not you need to go back to the office or you can work remote.
Yeah.
I used to do 2-hour each way commute, Kevin. That from my house is 20 miles to downtown, but it's 2 hours each way every day, 4 hours round
Wow.
trip. And it was painful because I missed out a lot of my kids' times. In the morning they have breakfast. I already had to leave. At night, when I come back, they're already sleeping. And not to mention, I got really, really grumpy every morning when I got to the office. I feel like I just went through a battle. And so there are upside to having people having the flexibility to work where it works for them. But then the flip side of that is, what about the younger generations? What about people that are just starting to work? They need that water cooler conversations. They need that interaction in person. They need that
network.
right to build a network to say, hey, let's grab a coffee. And a lot of conversations happen over coffee time. So I feel like we're still swinging right now. I hope that one day we can settle on what would work for both people and companies, but I feel like we have ways to go.
All right, Theo, swinging and missing, I think a lot of us are doing here lately. It feels like. Kevin, comment on that. First off, I've complained about my Atlanta commute from time to time, but 2 hours one way, that far beats some of my worst days. So Theo, I can man, that gives me a lot of pain. But Kevin, talk about that. Technology's impact on work, the remote in-office balance, what the future of work may look like.
So, I mean, I started working from home back in 2008, right? And never looked back. I mean, I really enjoyed the freedom. I really enjoyed the ability to do what I want to do and what I enjoy doing. But as Theo was talking about, I've already established my network. I was able to leverage that network. If I'm at the beginning of my career, I need to learn how to work with people, how to build relationships, how to be a human within a business environment. So you need to keep both of those. You need to keep that water cooler, but you still need to have that flexibility. So just like most things in life, it's moderation.
That's right. Whether it's remote or in person work or a
Right.
nice wine that they right
No
and
moderation in wine.
so if anyone fully leaning into this, but if anyone's caught her previous appearances with us here, Theo, like Kevin and I both are, we love wine. So, but Theo, your quick comment there on what Kevin said, and then I want to move to this third topic here that I can't wait to get your take.
It, it's grape juice, by the way, adult grape juice. Um,
Yeah. That's what they all say.
had to have my vice. That's my vice. So I agree with you, Kevin. I think what's been really fascinating to see is the companies that are leaning into will give the flexibility, will meet you halfway. For
Mhm.
example, establishing a day twice a month that people will actually meet in the office to create that, chance encounters,
Yeah.
if you will, and interaction, and then allow people to work somewhere else. And then there's the full swing of the other big company, which we will not name, that said, well, you are going to come back to the office. And by the way, these are the only offices that we will allow you to consider as headquarters. Never mind that we
Right.
spent millions and millions building out some other headquarters over by Northern Virginia, close by the airport. But,
Yes. I know
right?
that company well.
We're not going to name names here, but so it's fascinating to see how different companies are dealing with that. I think we're still shaking out.
Yeah, I completely agree, and will for a long time, and
Mhm.
some of your previous appearances with us, Theo, your perspective around making sure no generation is left behind, right? Because we have generational preferences within any generation. You've got individual preferences, and really that's where we're kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, Kevin, when it
Yeah.
comes to a smart technology strategy. Really, what are the objectives, and can we bring that down when you think of a workforce? Can we bring that down to an individual level so that everyone can have this unique success and experiences they need to do the best work for the organization and to be personally successful? So more to come on that. No easy answers here today, but I want to talk about Theo, fintech. Now, you were sharing in the green room. We got to kill that word. But before we do that, before we officially make that happen, we hit it with the gavel and all. Just define that. We've got the smartest audience in the world, but just for the handful of folks out there that maybe hadn't spent time, define what we're talking about when it comes to fintech and share some observations there.
But that's precisely the problem. How do we
Mm.
define fintech, right? And I think that's why more and more I feel like we don't even know how to define it. You ask, 15 people, they could come up with 4 or 5 different definitions. So in the very, very basic level, fintech is financial technology, which is you're combining financial and technology. You have businesses that use technology to do what they do and do what they do
Right.
better. Now, here's the thing. Can you find one company that is not using technology to do what they do? You can't. I mean, that makes no sense. Unless you're still, I don't know, writing a check and giving it to a pigeon to deliver somewhere. You are going to be using technology and to automate some part of your financial services in your process. So in that context, fintech has lost the
Mm.
meaning, because originally when the ecosystem started, a lot of this is about new innovation, that bringing technology and finance together, new ways of doing things. We had the PayPals of the world at that time. We
Right.
had the
Right.
how about we do mobile banking, all of these new things, but it's not really new anymore. I mean,
Mm.
PayPal, last count, they processed $1.4 trillion in gross payment last
Wow.
year. That's not a
Mm.
startup. That's right. Or Chime, right? Chime is huge right now. Or Intuit, Kevin, to your
Yeah.
example earlier.
Right. Into it.
they're not a startup anymore. So where do you cut off? Do you cut off by how long they've been around? Do you cut off by volume of business? Do you cut off by their market share? It gets to the point where, well, if it doesn't really mean anything, if you ask a lot of
Mm,
people, it means different things, then why are we keeping their word around?
Hmm.
right, exactly.
Kevin, your response to that?
So we always want to jump to the new thing, and it's a trend. But many people don't take the time to really understand the trend, and that lends to a lot of misunderstanding and misuse. And I think that's one of the issues that we have with technology. Many people, when cloud computing start, they envisioned a big cloud in the sky where you plugged into. It's like, no, it's just data centers. but people don't really take the time to understand and learn. I mean, everyone's not a technologist, but if it means so much, it affects your life so much, you really need to understand what you're doing. And financial services is one of the things that affects everyone's life. So, Theo, you're right. Maybe people are misusing fintech because they don't really understand how technology can directly affect your finances. They just want to jump on the bandwagon.
I really wish we had some of these latest and greatest financial technology platforms when I was in the Air Force, Kevin, because I don't know about you, my paycheck and my LES was never right, Kevin. I lived in those offices. That aside, one final thought here. For the portion, and Theo, you're very well said, for the portion of the word fintech that talks about successfully onboarding suppliers and making sure they get paid, or team members for that matter, making sure they get paid, that is so relevant in global supply chain space. And I tell you, I don't know about y'all, Theo and Kevin, we've coined a new word here called procurement purgatory from some of the platforms that is not right. That's not efficient and easy to use, and doesn't, for that UX, that user experience, it's not quite there. So maybe they need part of that 20 billion to Intuit invested in theirs, Kevin. I don't know, but Theo, before I want to talk about the book, we got a few more minutes here, but before I talk about the book, your final word on where this space, I'll just call it the space, is headed.
The space is heading in a lot of interesting directions. There's been a lot of talk about, oh my God, the sky's falling and people are not investing in fintechs anymore because everyone is running to AI. But I think I always like to look back at what exactly are we doing? Forget the whole funding, forget, all the other hype and distractions out there. Why do we exist and what are we doing? Right? We exist to solve problems. What are the problems we're trying to solve? I'll give you an easy one. The credit card debt for Americans hit a record $1 trillion.
Yes.
That is not a record that we want to be boasting about, but here we are. So what is our industry's responsibility to try to help consumers out who are so indebted? Is it responsible to go create more payment methods such as buy now, pay later so we can get them in debt further? Or should we look at how can we help people move money more efficiently, to your point, get people paid faster and help them understand their financial situation better so that they can actually get to a more secure path? Perhaps that. And then, with that, then there's the whole discussion about what is the role of big technology companies in the world of embedded finance. I'll give you an example. Apple. I love Apple. I'm a big Apple fan. And so I have the Apple credit card when it was launched. I have iPhones, obviously, and Mac and all of that. And I signed up for Apple savings account when it came out, literally the same day. It was so fast. It was so easy. It was so seamless. But what was incredible wasn't about the onboarding experience. We kind of take it for granted. It needs to be quick and easy.
Right.
What was fascinating was how it can help you save without you even thinking about it. My previous example that I love was Acorns. I've used Acorns as an example for a long time. You set it, forget it, and you save. With Apple Savings, what it does is it takes all of the money that you have from, the 1%, 2%, and what have you, from using your card, and it sweeps it into the savings account, and you get 4.5%. And I didn't even notice until like last week when I looked. I'm like, oh, I have $400 here. Now that is cool, especially for people who are cash trapped. Every single little bit helps. $5,
Sure.
$10. So why are banks not doing that? And is Apple a fintech? I don't know.
Well, I have a question for you about fintech. Theo, maybe answer me. Why is it that fintech will let the bank take my money like 30 seconds after I buy something, but when I'm trying to get my pay or get paid, it takes 5 days. No, work days, 5 work days. So why doesn't fintech work on both sides of this equation? And I think that's one
American problem.
Yeah.
We all know the answer.
That's one of the issues. I mean,
we all know the answer.
Have a balance. If we're going to use fintech, it has to help everyone, right?
That's right.
Not because of fintech, but it's a much longer conversation.
Yes. All right. We're going to have you back, Theo. This hour has gone way too fast. But I want to talk about, so on the heels of your successful book that we all loved and enjoyed, Beyond Good, which I've got a couple copies, I think, back behind me, comes this next book, The Metaverse Economy. Now, really quick, because our time is waning, I want to read this quote. I love the book so far. I'm about halfway through it. From Nelson Mandela, you've got at the beginning of chapter 4. It says, quote, "We often talk about the globalization of our world, referring to our world as a global village. But too often those descriptions refer solely to the free movement of goods and capital across the traditional barriers of national boundaries. Not often enough do we emphasize a globalization of responsibility," end quote. Love that from Mr. Mandela. Theo, what's your why behind this book and where can folks get it?
So I wrote this book with my co-author, Arun, who's based in the UK. He spent the last 2+ years in the metaverse. And real quick, the story was we met in London shortly after the world, quote unquote, reopened after COVID. And I asked him what he was doing. He told me what he was doing. And I'm like, yeah, funny. I was a non-believer and I thought it was hype. It was a lot of hype. And the next thing you know, I started looking into it, and he had such a wealth of knowledge on how and what the metaverse is. And I told him, I said, we need to put this in a book. And so the book is about what is the metaverse, what are the building blocks, and then it's about, my perception of what it needs to be and what it can do for community. Because for me, technology is fun, but for tech to be adopted and for tech to be worthwhile, it needs to serve a purpose. And so every time when I see something, my ask will be why? What does it do? And why do we want to do it? Why do we want to spend time on it? And what would be interesting, what I always see is the metaverse as the hype exists is not going to be how it is going to be. I think is going to create a very interesting and different future, but it will take time. We're talking about 8-10 years plus. It will take people. It take a lot of different people. And the one biggest reason why I want to write the book and put it out there is because I want to have more people involved in the book. I want to include more voices from different corners of the world in the book. And so I spent a lot of time digging into who else is doing interesting things other than people in our backyard in the United States. What are other countries doing? What are other people doing? What are the women doing? And I'll end it with this. Do not ever come to me and tell me that there are no women in Web3. And that is precisely why I wrote the book.
Don't do it. When she says don't do it, you better not do it. And I've got a couple images here. I think this is from the first book signing. I love that. I think I saw this across social. Of course, you can get The Metaverse Economy probably wherever you get books from. I found it on Amazon. You got local bookstores, you name it, Theo. And you know what, Kevin? You and her both I'm glad y'all have agents so I can stay in touch with you both. Theo, that first book signing was DC. She's headed to New York next. And then she's got 6 more book signings coming up. So
Wow.
goodness gracious.
I'm gonna get my
Theo,
sound copy before they run out.
right.
We
Or
might
you might be
need to
reading the
meet in
metaverse
person.
version.
Yes, let's do that.
Yes.
Theo, last question for you, and then Kevin will make sure folks know how to connect with you as well. How can folks connect with you other than the Metaverse Economy and the One Vision podcast? How can folks connect with you?
So find me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time nowadays, and Threads, or metaverseeconomybook.com or beyondgoodbook.com. Either one.
Awesome. It's just that
Thank
easy.
you.
Great to have you here, Theo, but don't go anywhere just yet. We're going to have y'all both back. But Kevin, man, Digital Transformers continues to do well, and we get a
Yes.
lot of feedback. This, I think, was the latest episode with Ramiro Fernandez. So tell us, how can folks connect with all the cool things you're doing at Digital Transformers and beyond?
Yes, our most recent was episode with SAP and PIM Brands. I mean, you probably, who is PIM Brands? Well, if you ever have the gummies or the fruit rolls, that's
Okay.
PIM Brands. And it's a really fascinating discussion about how brands have to leverage technology in order to improve their services to their customer.
Man.
And but you can always catch me on Digital Transformers, or here, right here on the Buzz second week, and on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or X, or whatever.
Whatever that's called these days.
Kevin _ Jackson.
Well, one last thought, and then we're up against time. We're going to sign off. But I'll just tell y'all the power of digital relationships. I'm pretty sure that I first met both Theo and Kevin first on X, which was formerly Twitter. And from there, as we connected and I really got to know their perspective and expertise, man, we've collaborated a number of different ways. So folks, whatever you do, make sure you connect with Theo Lau and Kevin L. Jackson. They're doing very special things in the industry, far beyond books and podcasts, but they're changing the world. And that's the name of the game, folks. That's the name of the game. So thanks for everyone for showing out here today. Really appreciate it. I know we couldn't hit everybody's comment. Big thanks to Catherine and Amanda behind the scenes helping to make today happen. Of course, big thanks to Theo and Kevin. But folks, here's our calling today on this day, more than any other day, perhaps, right? First off, never forget. But secondly, now's the time to help out your neighbor, right? Let's remember all of those over the last 22 years that have had tremendous loss and grief and you name it. Let's honor them by helping a neighbor. No, there's nothing too small, too big you can do. It's all about deeds, not words. And on behalf of our entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.